Hello there. Hi. Hey, how are you? It has been a while, or hello if you're new here. I'm Angela and I have been away for a long time. My bad. No, I actually haven't. I've been here a lot, actually. Well, for me, I feel like it's been a lot. I have been so fortunate to be able to be doing so many buddy reads with our book club and with friends, and been able to join live shows and reading sprints. And I have just had the best time, just with everything book related, booktube, bookstagram. I've met so many wonderful friends. I am finally in a good time where I can get back into filming, and I'm really excited to. I mean, you didn't think Halloween was gonna pass without me coming back and doing videos, did you? Come on, like Halloween, fall, autumn, this is the best time of year and just the most inspiration for reading, at least the books that I like to read. So, hello. I'm so happy to be here, so happy to be back. I figured what would be a good idea is to update you on myself as a reader. In the past year or so, my taste in books has significantly changed. I still read all the same things that I used to, but now I am like pivoting towards other genres and other types of writing. And so I figured what I would do as my saying hello again video is I would talk about what are my new favorite authors, what are my new favorite things to read, what have I been loving and not talking about yet over the past year. So the first thing, if I'm talking about what has been one of the most impactful reads for me, I have to say Mrs. Death by Selena Godin. This book I ordered from Waterstones when I was ordering, oh gosh, this breathtaking signed limited edition of Babel. I had to order this, and when I pre-ordered that, I also ordered this because I hadn't been able to find this in Barnes & Noble. Oh yeah, and I had ordered the UK cover of Coraline because it is so much better than ours. I just, for some reason, don't like the American editions of Coraline, and I love that movie so much, so neither here nor there. My point is, I ordered Mrs. Death. Surprise, surprise, shows up, and it's signed by the author. It says Big Love, Selena Godin, XX, and I was not expecting that, and it turned out to be fate because this might be the most impactful, wonderful book I've ever read. I mean, I don't want to say impactful as if I didn't already think or believe a lot of the stuff in this, but impactful to read it, and just the most impactful, beautiful writing. Mrs. Death is about death personified and a writer named Wolf who is writing her story. It alternates between poetry. Some of them are pages of just a lot of run-on words. A couple of them are. There are passages of regular narration, and you're following both Mrs. Death's perspective and Wolf's thoughts, Wolf's story, and it is quite heavy. It doesn't shy away from the reality of life and death, and they're interspersed throughout stories of certain people who die, who get murdered. There's a Jack the Ripper story, who have a tragic accident, all of these different things that Mrs. Death deals with. And she's kind of at a point where she's a little bit struggling with all of it, even though she, like most people, like, you don't view death as a bad thing. It's, you can't have life without death. And life is her sister, and you need both. And while this is quite heavy, I think that a big point of it is that you can't have life without death. Death gives life meaning. For me, I'm someone who is kind of almost comforted that like life doesn't go on forever. We are here and we make meaning out of it, and then we are not going to be here. And this book really gives you a lot of thoughts and reminders about that, and about life and existence, and mental health and emotion, and it just goes on and on and on. Read content warnings if you need to. It definitely does not shy away from the nitty-gritty about all of this. But honestly, like I have this on my nightstand still, and I open it up and read passages, and I am constantly just going like, oh yes, yes. And to reference what I had been saying, this is part of a poem in the book, and it says, "And I know death is inevitable and necessary. Without death, you wouldn't live. Without knowing you die, this would be endless. That is why you need death." And that being said, as you go further on, I'm just going to read one more passage to kind of give you an idea of the writing and what it's about. She talks about how, "I have come here to walk the earth as human. I choose to be disguised and camouflaged. I live in the faces of the most betrayed and ignored of all humans. I live in silence. I am the words trapped on the bitten tongue. I am more than a statistic. I am more than another hashtag. I live in the heart of the poor woman, the black woman, the elderly woman, the sick woman, the healer, the teacher, the priestess, the witch, the wife, the mother, and the girl. I am death, and I am quick. I am a rabbit, and I can vanish. I can be anything I want to be. I choose the unheard and unspoken. I live in the silent scream, and I will be silent no more, and I have so much work to do." Selena Godin, the writing, her mind, it's just spectacular. The next section of books or type of books I'm going to talk about that I have just really been loving are kind of like weird, strange books. Kind of. I don't know if that's the right way to say it. The reason why I say weird and strange is because I decided last year to try out some strange books. I was like, I wonder if this would be for me. Let me just give it a shot. And the two that I chose were Bunny and Catherine House. Surprise, surprise, I love these books so much. Like, God, Catherine House is like a dream. I remember reading this and taking a nap, kind of like dozing off on my bed as I was reading it. And I woke up and I felt the same feeling as I was napping and reading the book. Like, you feel like you're in a haze, because this book is about a private, really exclusive college, university. Tuition is free, but it's really hard to get in. But then when you are a student of the school, you are not to leave for the whole like 3 years. You are not to leave. And there are some famous people, some scientists, some studies that were done around at this school anyway. And it's kind of like what we would consider paranormal, but the book is not really paranormal. It's such a strange thing to explain. And I know that this has very mixed reviews, but I loved it. And I loved the idea that the main character, all these strange things were happening, and she wasn't really that interested in trying to figure it out. She was just like, yeah, it is what it is. Like, she wasn't really, I hadn't read anything like this. And if you have this kind of copy of the book, I recommend going to the end and reading the about the author interview with Elizabeth Thomas. I thought it was really interesting. It's described by her as a gothic literary suspense novel set at a cult-like college. Perfect. It plays on a lot of gothic tropes with a modern twist. There's some odd and dangerous experiments at the school. It talks about how her family and she went to Yale, and as a Black family, what it was like going to Yale. And some of that is reflected in this story. I don't know, I just feel like this was such a fascinating story. So this was another huge, good book that I read recently. And then Bunny. See, here's the problem with these strange books. I don't know how to describe them. How does one describe Bunny? Also university, also sort of cult-like, also very strange. How would you describe this? There is a main character who's a writer. They go to New England's elite Warren University, and then there is this clique of these girls who call each other Bunny. And first, the main character cannot stand them, understandably. And then when she gets invited to go to their house and kind of be a little bit integrated within them, then things start to kind of spiral. I would call it spiraling from there. Also a phenomenal book. also cannot speak highly enough of Bunny. I mean, I need to reread it now. It's been long enough that I'm like, I need to reread it because it was so good. Next really strange one that I absolutely loved, Comfort Me with Apples by Catherine M. Valente. This is about, gosh, these are so hard to describe. This is about, I mean, it reminds me of Stepford Wives meets the Bible. Because it is truly kind of like biblical references. I wouldn't call it a metaphor. It directly is influenced by like Adam and Eve and the Garden of Eden. And it's like the idea of this Stepford Wivey perfect neighborhood, and everyone there are all like kind of similarly based off of like the Garden of Eden, like different animals, or the main character is clearly based off of like Adam's wife, and very strange things start happening. It starts to get very weird, and she starts to find like things in her house. Like she finds like a tooth and somebody's hairbrush that's not hers with like female hair in it, and it just starts to slowly unravel, and you're following, don't know if it says her name, Sophia. The way it's written is she's very like, you have to like be okay with this going on. It's written from her perspective, and she's very like, my husband is perfect, everything is perfect, I was made for him, our home is perfect. Like she's very whimsical and like, oh my gosh, this is a, and then that is what makes it even eerier when she starts to find like kind of like body parts in their house, and then the neighborhood starts acting strange, and that is when she begins to slowly question, is everything perfect? There's a lot of strange things starting to happen, and I just thought it was unreal. Loved it. And it's a very short story. Another very, very, very strange book that is a favorite of mine is Just Like Home by Sarah Gailey. The cover is so good. I love this cover. I've heard so many mixed reviews about this. Once again, this is the author who wrote The Echo Wife. So this book is about Vera, the main character. She is coming home to the house that she grew up in because her mother is dying. So she's coming back to help pack up the house, having never spoken to her since she was 17 years old. And it's a mutual thing. The history of this book, and this is not a spoiler, this is in the description, is that her father was a serial killer and had his area to do that in the basement, which was underneath her bedroom. The interesting part about this book is that she had such a great relationship with her father and not a good one at all with her mother. And the thing that makes it even more interesting is that once again, strange things are happening with the house. It almost feels like the house is its own living, breathing entity. And the way that it is written is what I think sells me. I know that a lot of people don't have a great time with this book. Again, like I feel like if a book is rated low, it immediately piques my interest, which is not a good thing. No, that's not true. It has to be rated low with a plot that I find really interesting, because for me, this plot was so interesting, but more importantly, the writing. I have to read a line that just, it kind of describes what I'm talking about. Well, first of all, look at how many flags that I have. So as she comes home, she drops her keys in the bowl, and Sarah Gailey writes, "The house swallowed the sound immediately because it was a house that knew how to stay quiet." I don't know why that line, I put a star next to it. It just, there's a lot of lines like that. You alternate perspectives between when she's a child and now. As Vera comes back, she's trying to pack up the house. She's dealing with her mother, who they have a very contentious relationship. And then at the same time, Vera's also dealing with strange things happening around the house. Like she starts finding letters from her father. Again, this is not a spoiler. It says right here that there's notes around the house in her father's handwriting. And then there's odd things happening, and there is just, there's just so many levels to this and layers, and I honestly, I can't talk too much about it because everything I told you is what's in the synopsis, and I don't want to tell you anything that's a spoiler, because it's just going through the journey of Vera and her father's life and relationship, and the house and her relationship with the house. And I could not stop reading this. I love this book so much. So anything like weird house related or hotel related and like potentially paranormal, I just can't get enough. And good writing, man. I think Sarah Gailey's writing is just for me. I can't say enough. So another strange book, and I guess that's like my 4 favorite strange books that I've read in the last year that I would really say this is my taste. This is my taste. That being said, okay, if you have any recommendations for any of these things that I'm about to talk about, my favorites, if you have any recommendations, especially of books like these, please, I will be so happy to read those. I honestly want more things like these. That being said, I don't love gratuitous violence or gore or gratuitous dark things in life, if that makes sense. I am, if you can't tell, moving towards horror. That has become just, I love horror. And I don't know why I'm surprised, because when I was a teenager and younger, which blows my mind, I should not have been reading this, but I used to like only read Stephen King. I've read most of Stephen King's older books, not anything really very new, but like I used to read Stephen King a lot. So why I'm surprised that horror is like really what I'm into, I don't know, but horror is where I've been going. As I said though, I just don't like gore that much. Like if it's gratuitous, I don't mind it. Well, I guess I better talk about these. Apparently slasher, or if it's done well, I can handle these slashers. Not just handle. Stephen Graham Jones. These are 2 of like some of my all-time favorite books, and they're both by him. These are the only books I've read by Stephen Graham Jones, but they're both 5 stars for me. So new favorite author as well, at least from these 2. So the reason I bring these up is because these are both like slashers. This especially, this book is a love story to slashers. It is an ode to slashers. And this one was unexpectedly pretty graphic. And I love them. But I say this to say, like, I don't think that I will be really interested in like books that really explore like super gross, nasty, dark things. Like I don't like true crime. True crime, I really don't like. I don't think that people who have hurt other people like that should have a platform. I feel like their names should be wiped out from history. We should not be talking about them, especially not be idolizing them. Like it really gets me in a dark place, and it really makes me disgusted and horrified by humanity. And that's not something I want to do. I want to read for enjoyment. And I think the difference is that with horror, I kind of get that like adrenaline that you get when you go through a fake haunted house. I like that little adrenaline feeling, and that like, oh my God, what's going to happen next? Oh my God, is this paranormal? Please let it be paranormal. I love it when it's paranormal. And so often they don't do that. Like these 2 are my favorites. Stephen Graham Jones, the way that he writes, I don't know what it is, but these 2 books absolutely have my whole heart. I don't know, that's such a weird thing to say, but I love these books. So My Heart is a Chainsaw is about a high schooler, Jade, and she's graduating high school, and she is, and I don't use this word lightly, obsessed with slasher films, has seen like every slasher film ever, and you can tell that Stephen Graham Jones has as well, and this is just his ode to slashers. So this book explores, it says, the changing landscape of the West, and it makes sense because there is across from the lake in their town this new development building up. They're taking the land, they're building these really rich, fancy houses and disrupting all of it. Jade is convinced that a slasher is starting in their town, a real life slasher. And there's a new girl from the rich family that she's convinced is the final girl. And she needs to train the final girl to be prepared for the final showdown because she thinks that a slasher is happening. This book is amazing. And then the other one, The Only Good Indians, my goodness. So this one, it says that it follows 4 American Indian men after a disturbing event from their youth puts them in a desperate struggle for their lives. Tracked by an entity bent on revenge, these childhood friends are helpless as the culture and traditions they left behind catch up to them in a violent and vengeful way. So good. Another horror author that I can't say is my favorite yet because I've only read one book, but I bought all the rest, and I'm pretty sure, at least all the rest that my store had, and I'm pretty sure this is going to be a new favorite author. I cannot tell you how much T. Kingfisher blew my mind in What Moves the Dead. This is another novella, and this is based on the fall of the House of Usher. It's not just based, it's a straight up retelling of the fall of the House of Usher by Edgar Allan Poe. My God, this book, I have highlighted so many pages in here and passages, and I have to always show the inside because it gives you a good vibe. In this one, you have the main character going to visit the Ushers, which is a brother and sister who lives in the English countryside in this huge but dilapidated and falling apart house. And they're clearly very sick, especially the sister. And the friend is coming to visit to try to lift their spirits. But in this, you can see from that is just such a perfect picture for this. There are a lot of like nightmarish kind of things going on. In this remote countryside, there is so much fungi everywhere. There is a lake that is like having strange things as well, and these rabbits who don't move or behave like rabbits. And this is set on the background of strange things going on with the brother and sister, the Ushers. And I have to tell you, I mean, I could not love these characters more. And the humor even, there's even humor in this. I just can't wait to read the rest of T. Kingfisher's writing. Because if not before, like if this is because she's gotten better and better over the years, like I even just can't wait to see like the journey of her finding her voice, because her voice and humor mixed with beautiful lines, mixed with great characters and backstory and descriptions, I just can't get enough. So T. Kingfisher is gonna be one that I really explore coming soon because, oof, I loved What Moves the Dead. Another favorite that I was not expecting to be a favorite, that also has pretty low ratings, but I love it, is Leave the World Behind by Rumaan Alam. This is what I'm realizing. Yes, I love very beautiful descriptions and writing, and I love Erin Morgenstern's writing where it's just flowery and gorgeous. Also, on the opposite end of the spectrum, I also love writing like this, and often like Stephen King's too, where it doesn't pull punches. It's just blunt, nitty gritty, is not afraid to just talk about the less attractive side of being human and of people's personalities or thoughts or feelings or behaviors. You didn't love the characters, like inherently, because it talks about like what they're thinking and what they're feeling, and like, ugh, they're jealous about this, or like, God, they can't stand this, or like they don't trust this person, or whatever it may be. To me, I just feel very immersed in it. I feel like they're real people, because we are like that a lot. These are our thoughts. Maybe we don't say it out loud, and a lot of these times they didn't say it out loud, but this is what humans are like. We have a lot of these issues, and not even issues, but just like, it's not sugarcoating life. We have to go to the bathroom. Sometimes we get sick and have to throw up. Like, it, you know what I'm trying to say? It doesn't ignore what being a human is like. Whereas like a lot of other things, like I said, I love Erin Morgenstern. I love the beauty of it, but I also love the reality of it. And this book is about a family, a mother, father, daughter, and son, and they go to a house that's an Airbnb for a vacation. As they're on the vacation, like the first or second night, they get a knock at the door in the dark, And it's a couple, and they're saying, I know that this is unexpected. This is actually our house, and I know that you rented it from us, but there's something going on in the world, and all the power is out everywhere else, and we didn't know where to go. So we had to come here to our house. Can we stay here? And the whole book, you don't know what the big event was that happened, but you just have this sense of like foreboding and this sense of, well, can you even trust this couple? Maybe they're not telling the truth. Maybe that's not what's going on in the world. And another thing that I absolutely loved about this book, and I really want more books to be like this, is that throughout the scene, Rumaan Alam would talk about the thoughts of all of the different characters. It wasn't, oh, this chapter is this person's perspective, this chapter is this person's. Throughout the chapters, it would go through what they're all different people thinking, like what all the different people are thinking and doing. And I found that so much more enjoyable and pleasurable to read. I felt like I was in the scene rather than having to constantly have multiple perspective chapters where you get pulled out of the scene and then you reread the same scene again from someone else's perspective. And then you get pulled out and you reread it. And to me, like, that doesn't flow as well. I liked this so much. And this book was so good. And then speaking of this book, apparently I'm into, I don't know if you want to call it post-apocalyptic, but like something's wrong kind of books, because I finally read Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. Station 11 was so good, man. It was so good. If you don't know, Station 11 is about a pandemic that happens and a lot of people do not survive. And then you follow the people who do survive. And these tents and whatnot, there is a traveling Shakespeare troupe. And they go through and they perform Shakespeare in different places. And you're not only following them, you're following multiple different perspectives. And it's that thing where by the end they all tie together. It's so interesting. But another big plot point is that there is a man who's also going through these like towns, but there's not many people left. He starts kind of getting followers and talking about this way of thinking and living, and it's kind of got cult vibes, you know? And again, the way it all ties into the end, oh, he's a prophet, a violent prophet, as it says, a violent prophet who will threaten the tiny band's existence. It's so good. It's so good. So yeah, I guess I like kind of like, because I also liked The Stand a lot. And so I think I kind of like stories like this too. So that's a new thing I also like. And then the last thing I will share, because I was talking about new favorites, new favorite author. The author is Nevo. Nevo, I read The Chosen and the Beautiful from my book club, the Top Shelf Society. We read The Chosen and the Beautiful, and then we got to interview Nevo. Like, oh, one of the more memorable nights of my life, honestly. It was a blast getting to talk with the author, and I clearly loved it because, again, I feel like I have post-its on like every other page, and these post-its were mostly of beautiful writing. Nevo's writing is just breathtaking to me. And what I find so phenomenal is that these are very different types of books. Like the writing even is a different type of writing. And I just think the talent of being able to not just genre switch, but genre switch in a way where even your writing changes to kind of match the tone. Like The Empress of Salt and Fortune and When the Tiger Came Down the Mountain, these are little novellas, and these are about stories, and it's in an empire. It says reminiscent of Imperial China. And then this one is a Great Gatsby retelling with magical realism involved and in a world where kind of like Gatsby's kind of like people make deals with the demons and devils and these illusions at the parties and whatnot. May or may not, they're magical, you know? And but this actually comes from the perspective, if you've read The Great Gatsby, of Jordan Baker, the friend who's a tennis player. And it's from her perspective, and this is her, and it is so good. I need to reread this. I love these books. And then I have next by her, Siren Queen, to read, and oh my god, I just mwah, chef's kiss, so good. And getting to talk with her on video in our live stream was just even better. It just makes it even that much more special because I know that the person behind the words was fantastic. I loved talking with her. I've covered a lot of ground here. I've covered a lot of books, I feel like. And I just have to say, these are not even scratching the surface. I have read so many good books in the, like, I don't even know how long it's been, the last few months, the last year. I am really finding my groove in what things I'm interested in right now. Another topic that I didn't include just yet is I really am getting into mysteries. Not mystery thrillers, but mysteries. Like, like this one, The Thursday Murder Club, and like cozy. I don't know if I call this cozy, but mysteries. I'm getting into that too. I like all of the genres that I've always liked, but I will say there is something that has kind of changed how I view reading. This is going to be super common sense, and I know that, but I didn't used to do this. It is that when I pick up a book, I stopped trying to find a book that is my favorite. I used to read a book and be like, is this going to be my next favorite book? Is this exactly for me? Is this exactly what I want this to be? Does the plot go in a way that I want it to go? Does it wrap up how I want it to wrap up? And then I would rate it according to my satisfaction level of like, did this become my perfect book? And that's not what books are. These books are the author's books. It's their stories that they're telling. And when I kind of get rid of those expectations as best as I can, obviously you have preferences for how the story goes and turns out, but if I try to get rid of the expectation of, oh, this is going to be a 5-star, I need it to be a 5-star, I can't wait, I'm doing a good job not doing that with Babbel, I'm not trying to think of it as 5-star, I find that I enjoy the book so much more. You go into the book just seeing what story the author's telling you. Right? So having done that and changed my mindset about books to just, let's see what this story is going to be from the author. What is this author telling? I've had such a better time with reading. It has been so interesting, so much fun. I'm constantly wanting to pick up books all the time, and I'm not really nervous about them as much. I don't know. I just have had a blast. So I've read so many 4- and 5-star books lately. And even if I give a book 3-star, just with having that different mindset of being curious and just wondering what the author's gonna have their story about, it even has made like 3 stars more interesting, even more enjoyable. I'm not disappointed by any books because I won't say any, but I try not to be disappointed by books because I didn't have that expectation of what it would be in the first place. I didn't know, really. So these are just brushing the surface, but I have now updated you on some of my favorite reads of the past. This has been about a year. So these are some of my favorite reads of like the past year, and authors that I have been loving, and genres that I have been loving, and styles of writing. Thank you for being here, and I look forward to being here more. Take care.